We are going to take up segmentation now, and of course this means keeping users split apart according to their purpose and what you want them to be able to access. There are several types. There's VLAN segmentation. This means that groups of people are on separate subnets. For example, your production people are on one subnet and your HR people are on another subnet, and these are done through VLANs, which we talked about in an earlier video on, I think it was last week, where we talked about how VLANs work. Guest segmentation, it is what it sounds like. We have a guest account, a guest SSID, and our guests are relegated to that network so they can't get on our main network. We can have various kinds of those. We can have just open ones, or we can have common password ones where people visit the doctor's office, for example, and you see in there the Wi-Fi password is whatever it is. And then we can have provisioned password or temporary password. And in this case, we have maybe a password that only lasts for an hour or 2 hours. And then we have to assign a new password for other people coming in. DMZ segmentation. DMZ means demilitarized zone, and the idea here is something like this. So here's my internal network, and I have maybe a web server out here. I want here's my enterprise LAN, in other words, my private network over here, and I want to be able to program my web server. I want to be able to add new web pages and so on to my web server. Well, I would do that through a firewall here that does not allow people from the public in. Now I have another firewall over here that does allow people in through here. It allows people on the internet to get to my web server to serve up or to ask for web pages. So this is called the demilitarized zone. SNMP is a protocol that allows for centralized management of devices on your network. The idea is that you can configure your devices on the network all through one workstation. You can also collect logs and messages from many devices on your network all on one device. So it's both ways. It can collect information from devices or send information to devices. Discovery protocols are protocols that allow us to map a network automatically. Now there are a few that have been put out in the world. CDP is a Cisco discovery protocol, and it has some issues, and so we don't use it very often. It's sort of been relegated to the Never Never land. LLDP is link layer discovery protocol, and this one we use more often, but do remember that anytime we have these discovery protocols, they are prone to attack by the bad guy who can also map our network with them. IP services and DOS attacks or manipulation. What we mean is there are a number of kinds of services that we do over the internet today. We don't just do web traffic. We do email traffic. We do NTP or network time protocol traffic, DHCP or dynamic host configuration protocol traffic. We do DNS traffic, and so on. Well, all of these are prone to denial of service attacks. In other words, if the bad guy sends a massive amount of traffic to any of those services, it can now shut that device down or turn it into just a public device that anybody can access. Single sign-on, management by single sign-on, is the concept that rather than having people log on to different services with different passwords, we can allow them to log on to a number of different websites or services within our network, all with a single sign-on. Now the nice thing about this is, of course, it's very nice for users. They don't have to remember multiple passwords. And from the administrator side, this is good security because I can disable one person's SSO and that locks them out from all the services on the network. Hard drive encryption. We can use various kinds of hard drive encryption, but hard drive encryption, the idea here is that you really should be also encrypting your hard drives. In other words, the physical devices. For example, BitLocker on Windows environments encrypts an entire drive, and the key is tied to the user so that when you log on, you automatically have access. You don't have to put a password in. It automatically gives you access. But if somebody removes that drive from the machine and puts it in another machine, they don't know how to access anything on it. BitLocker to go is a similar one, but it encrypts removable drives, such as flash drives, for example. And the user has to supply the password every time they access that USB device. Cloud-based Wi-Fi administration is very popular today. If I have a bunch of wireless access points all over my organization, I can make a centralized interface and control all of them through this one centralized interface. This is usually a cloud-based provider, and you have to pay for it. You pay the provider for access to this software that can now control and configure all of your wireless access points. In fact, many wireless access points today, that's the only way that you can control them, through a paid subscription to a wireless access, to a wireless cloud service, to a cloud service that is used to configure your wireless access points. Well, that's it for this week. I hope you've enjoyed this set of videos.